lads, lovelies, and everyone in between. Welcome back to JameJame's VR. So today we've got a hardware review. I've briefly talked about this in the past. I was hoping to do it last weekend, but it didn't arrive. So today I'm going to talk about this guy, the Droolon Pi 1 eye tracking add-on for Pimax headsets, paired of course with my 8KX. So I'm happy to report a glowing review with a score of, it's kind of good. It's Pimax. So you know what Pimax is like, right? We know by now. They're odd. Yeah. So, the out-of-the-box experience in Pimax tradition is complete fucking shit. Absolute shit. First off, the instructions include basically taking a box cutter to your headset. You don't cut the foam part, but the actual Comfort Kit back end part that you attach your facial foam to doesn't fit the eye module. And it's not like this is a product that we're hacking together. Pimax sells these in a bundle with the 8KX, but it doesn't fucking fit. I don't know what goes on at Pimax. They are crazy people, and I don't know what to tell you. They're just like that, dudes. They're just like that. I don't fucking know. What can I tell you? So, took my trusty box cutter, cut the offending parts of my expensive headset away. Well, to be fair, the Comfort Kit is replaceable. It's not an expensive part, really. You can order another one. But it's just weird that you have to do this. Why, Pimax? Huh. Okay, well, what the fuck ever. So, you do that, and then it fits all right. It doesn't really slot in anywhere exactly. It's strange. I mean, once it's all assembled, it's together and it's fine, but you're just like, this was a weird installation. But, okay, you know what? You know what? Fine. Now it's installed, now it's ready to go. Let's keep going. So, we install our software. That's easy enough. You plug it into the headset. There's a USB-C port on the bottom. And you have to run a little cable around the edge. It's fine. And it prompts you to install some software. It says, oh, it's not ready. You need to install the software, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. And I click download, and it fails instantly. And I had to click the retry button something like 30 times before it actually took and downloaded and installed the software. Cool. But it eventually did. So you install the software, and you calibrate it, which is fine. And then you test it out, and you're like, this actually kind of stinks. Yeah, it doesn't really do a good job. It doesn't track your eyes accurately, and it's kind of pokey. You definitely notice where you look at something, and then it's blurry, and then it sharpens up like a second later, and you're just like, what is this? Or sometimes it doesn't just sharpen up at all, and you're just like, okay, this is not very good. All right. Well, as I mentioned in previous videos, the solution is to install third-party firmware onto your eye tracking module. Yep, Pimax. I mean, this is not a module made by Pimax. As far as I know, all the eye tracking, whether they're integrated into the headset or not, are made by another company like Tobii or something. This one's made by Seven Invensun. Seven Invensun. All right. Okay. So here's the thing about this. The hardware is actually really not bad. Like, if Pimax had made this to fit nicely into the 8KX, like if it slotted in somewhere nice, with it does on other headsets they made, just not the 8KX, And they made this a bit more of a smoother process. Like the eyepieces just kind of hang down, and then you install a little magnetic thing that sort of works okay. And it's weird, and I don't know why they made it like this. I just don't. But the actual hardware is capable enough. That's the strange part. It's just that nobody, short of this guy, who I'm going to talk about in just 1 second. Yeah, right. So this guy, Guppyexpress, he went and redid the firmware, which he got from Seven Invention, and he fixed it. So that means that the hardware is actually perfectly capable. It's perfectly capable of tracking your eyes accurately and quickly. Yeah. And then the actual Pimax software, like PyTool, is actually good enough to keep track and have it work correctly. So the problem is just nobody actually finished this. Nobody took the time. They just sort of put this on the market. I'm like, here it is, whatever. And at least at some point they released firmware and source code files so this guy could just fucking fix it himself. And thank God that somebody was there who could have the right skills to actually do this. It's only insane. Why was this necessary? Why was this necessary? Just why? Right? Just why was this necessary? I mean, it just shouldn't be necessary. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre. But here's the thing. Once you install Guppyexpress's firmware, all of a sudden this actually begins to work pretty well. Neat. Yeah, it starts tracking your eyes accurately, quickly. You're playing games. You really actually don't notice it working at all because wherever you look, it sharpens up. It's accurate enough that most of the time you just don't even know it's there. And once in a while, you'll mistrack your eyes slightly for a fraction of a second or something. But for the most part, it works excellent. I'm actually quite pleased with this, in a way. So I guess that comes to the point is, well, if I can put a sentence together. You go through all this work. So you get this eye tracking module. The actual physical installation is very janky, very strange. Okay? Like it should have been way better than it is. I shouldn't need to cut pieces of the headset off with the Comfort Kit. I shouldn't. Actually getting the eyes attached is weird because it's like these lenses, basically like prescription lenses, inserts you might be familiar with. They're like that, really. But they're attached with a cable, which really isn't quite flexible enough for it to be anything but a bit of an annoying process to get them in when they are. Then they're kind of held in place by weak magnets, which isn't great. Once you get it all done and you're like, okay, this is actually pretty nice now. It's nice enough. I wanted to know if this would impact the FOV. When I was installing it, it kind of looked like it would. But I wasn't able to test it because for whatever reason, my HMD testing software just isn't working anymore. I don't know. And oh, who cares? I'll tell you that if it does, it's so little I didn't really notice. How's that? Yeah, you're still getting that magnificent Pimax FOV. If you're missing any degrees, it's only a handful, so whatever. You do really want to use the thicker 15mm foam. I was anyway. The thinner 11mm foam was perfectly good for me, but I just found the thicker 15 more comfortable anyway, so I ended up just using that. So that wasn't an adjustment I had to make, but if you like the thin foam and you do get this, you're probably going to want to switch to the thicker 15mm foam. Not the end of the world, I think, but it might be for you. But probably not, because the 15mm is actually quite a bit more comfortable, I found. Yeah. So you have that set up, it's physically nice. You go through, you verify that it works, then you install Guppyexpress's firmware, and then you apply his patches to the eye tracking software, you recalibrate it. That might take a few tries. It can take a couple tries to get that tracking just right. And it did for me, and then I got it just right, and now it's awesome. So it is awesome, though. But there's of course some limitations. And that really is that oddly enough, what I'm finding is that if you have fixed foveated rendering, right, there's a sort of a blur on the peripheral of your vision. I found most of the time I could just set that to aggressive and it was perfectly fine. Because you'd see something moving in your peripheral vision and then you'd turn your head and look at it, right? Because that's kind of what you do in real life, right? You don't focus on something in your peripheral. You want that peripheral because it does help because you can identify something coming at you from the sides, and just having that huge FOV is really amazing for immersion, right? To have your whole vision filled with your virtual world. That's awesome. And so if the edges are a little blurry, it was never really something that I was particularly bothered by. So that's cool. But with dynamic foveated rendering, I mean, of course, you see something moving, you look over, and it's sharp. But you still turn your head, because if it's something you care about, you're going to have to deal with it now, right? Like if it's a bad guy or a grenade, you're going to look at it, right? So I don't find it be that much of a game changer in that regard. I think on headsets with a much narrower field of view, this would be a bigger deal, because then that areas that are blurrier are going to be way more noticeable than they are on something like the Pimax, where the blurry sections are really off in your peripheral vision. So here's sort of what I would say is that honestly, the problem kind of is that even at the most aggressive settings, if you're using the dynamic foveated rendering with this eye tracking module, it can actually be quite a bit more aggressive. So we're only sort of partially taking advantage of what the actual potential could be, because if it's sharp wherever I'm looking, you can foveate off quite a bit of my field of view then, because I won't notice it, because everywhere I look will be sharp. So I feel like we could have a ultra aggressive setting in PyTool, or at least for the dynamic foveated rendering. Though it probably wouldn't hurt fixed foveated rendering either. But they could improve that. They could make that quite a bit more aggressive. And that would actually be a benefit for this setup. Because really, we could do more with this, honestly. So in a way, it's not being fully taken advantage of, and there's no performance improvement really over fixed versus dynamic foveated rendering. It's just whether it's noticeable or not. And on the Pimaxes using PyTool, oddly, the fixed foveated rendering wasn't all that terrible because of a hugely wide FOV in the first place, and even on aggressive, it didn't really cut into the center of your view at all. Where with dynamic, it could afford to cut in quite a bit because where you're focused will be fine. At least that's my opinion on the subject. Then there's some other nice things. It would have been nice. Well, this isn't something to do with the eye tracking module exactly. But here's the thing. If you're using something like VRChat, it doesn't actually have eye tracking. Now, there is a VRChat plugin for this exact thing that does exactly what you wanted to do, asterisk. Because you have to tweak your models now. You can't just install this module into VRChat, which is against the terms of service, of course, because VRChat really makes sure to give the players what they want by making sure they don't have any options. That's right, and never supporting hardware that we want to use. No, they know what we want is just to have the most bare bones experience possible. And I'm dripping with sarcasm. Fucking VRChat. Fucking VRChat, guys. Support shit. God, I have to fucking shout at the VRChat devs. They fuck up a lot, actually. We all love VRChat, but fucker, they fuck up sometimes. I may have to make a whole video shouting at VRChat devs. Oh well. So, can you use this in VRChat? Well, to get fixed foveated rendering performance, yes. But to have it track your avatar's eyes, of course, fucking not. Not unless you go and install the module and violate the terms of service and hope they don't ban you. They probably won't. But you don't know. And here's the challenging part. Now you have to modify your model, your avatar, and then upload that. I don't know how to fucking do that. I'm not an art person. My IT skills are all back end. I worked on like network authentication and shit like that. I don't know about art stuff. Not a bit. Yeah. So that's annoying. So I was really quite hoping that VRChat actually had some halfway decent support for fucking something for once. And of course they fucking don't. NeoS might. I haven't really got into it yet. I don't even think I have it installed. But that actually might be worth looking at. If it does, when I get around to testing, I'll leave a comment and any updates necessary. A note about compatibility. Some people were saying they had compatibility problems. I wonder if this isn't more of an old PyTool issue. Maybe 263 is what I always saw people talking about. But on 2.7.4, the latest version, I've actually never had too many problems with compatibility, because the dynamic foveated rendering will work wherever the fixed foveated rendering does. That does also mean NVIDIA only, by the way. So AMD users, once again, you're fucked. What can I tell you? It's the way it's meant to be played. Okay, anyway. So like Blade and Sorcery doesn't really support foveated rendering of any kind, so that didn't work. But say Beanstalker did, and it worked awesome. So places where, so I'd say compatibility is quite high. The only game that I know where I had issues off the top of my head was Song in the Smoke, where I had to just disable foveated rendering completely. And you'd have to do that with this too. Yeah. But most of my games, just fine. I haven't tested all of them yet. But for the most part, this has been pretty solid. Compatibility has not been an issue for me. However, I'm not a simmer. And sim gamers may have their own issues. If you're a sim gamer, get someone else's opinion. I don't play sim games. I don't care about them. Boring. So, yeah. Compatibility's good. I'll say that. I know other people have complained. I don't know what they're talking about. It all works fine for me. What can I tell you? Again, it might just be newer versions of PyTool from when they initially tested it and made their initial reviews back when this fucking thing came out. I would be surprised if there was a lot more problems back then. Although I am a little surprised now that I think about it that this actually got fixed, because it is Pimax we're talking about. Right, they're pretty wild. So, do I recommend this? Kind of not really, but not because it's bad. Because once you get the Guppyexpress firmware and software set up, this works as you would expect it to work. It does what it's supposed to. It gives you nice, dynamic, foveated rendering. The eye tracking is fast. It's accurate enough for the tasks at hand. But it, you know, what can I say? It's really not that much more advantageous for this headset, because even on aggressive, like if the aggressive setting in the fixed foveated rendering annoyed you, if you're kind of picky with that, then actually this is probably a pretty good option for you, because it actually does fix that. It didn't annoy me though, really. Right? Because if you see something moving at the edge, you turn, you look, it's fine. Here, now you look, and it's the same procedure, except it's just sharper when you look into your peripheral. I don't think it's that big a deal. If there was better support for things like VR chat, and if you're into NeoS, again, I'll leave a comment. I haven't confirmed it. I don't know the first thing about NeoS. I just don't. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maybe it's pronounced Neos. I don't fucking know. I've never heard it pronounced. But that might actually support eye tracking and shit like that. It generally has better support for hardware and stuff like that anyway. Where VR chat just refuses to fucking add support for fucking anything. I don't know why they're like that. I just do not know why they're like that, but they are. As in they're bitchy about fucking add-ons and expansions. Well, if you'd do your fucking job, the community wouldn't have to. So, there you go. I bet this would be a lot of fun if you did have the required skills to go make an avatar, then use the module. You probably won't get in trouble. I'm not saying you won't, just saying you probably won't. It's up to you. That could be fun. And again, it's accurate enough, it shouldn't be a problem. I guess I just feel that just because the way, even on the highest aggressive fixed foveated rendering settings, it's really not that bad. It's still your actual full resolution viewing area is still about what it is on something like an Index or probably more than a Quest 2 even, right? You're still probably at least 100, 120 degrees of clean rendering, even on the highest fucking settings. So you're not actually changing that much by having it track your eyes. So again, I think this would be improved significantly if we had an extra aggressive setting to really take more advantage of the fact that you can peel that, you can lower the resolution quite a bit more aggressively now with eye tracking, and it doesn't do that, and it should. We should have more options to have even more foveated stuff. That would actually be a pretty significant improvement and give you an actual reason to want something like this. Because a fact of the matter of the 8KX is there's no escaping the fact that it's two 4K displays that you're going to want to drive at a minimum of 90 frames per second. That's a fucking big ask. It's a fucking crazy ask. It's an ask that's so great the 3080 Ti I paid a fortune for really isn't enough. And nothing is. Even if you had a 3090 Ti, the biggest rip-off card ever, it still wouldn't be enough. Right? You still have to do shit to get things to run well. And this could be a significant advantage in that if they gave us a bit more options to really even increase the actual strengths of how they foveate things. Yeah. I suppose a couple other things. I didn't really have substantially more light leak. There's a tiny amount of light leak just on the very edges, top corners. Not a whole lot, but that varies per person. Some people had a lot of light leak around their nose. Some had a fair amount along the top. I haven't had either. It still looks fine for me. But some people had a problem with it, which means you might too. Or you might not. Who knows? So, I'm kind of pleased they bought this because it's a gadget. And if nothing else, here are the two really big reasons I think you should get this if you have a Pimax headset. Number one, Vario Aero users have dynamic foveated rendering. You can say, I don't see what the big deal is. I do too. Whatever. You paid too much for your headset. Enjoy your scuba gear FOV. 2. PlayStation 2 VR fanboys who think that eye tracking is this amazing new feature. Now you can tell them, what are you talking about? We've had it for ages. Huh? You're not innovative or cool at all. Big deal, noob. You guys are just playing catch up and you will for the rest of your lives because you're peasants. Yeah, and those are the two big reasons to get this module. And the third is it is slightly better looking because, of course, you know, there are no rough edges anymore with it. Yeah. Don't even think about getting this unless you're comfortable taking box cutters to your headset and fucking around with the firmware. It's not hard to do. Neither is hard to do. Okay? It's easy, it's quick. You just cut off little pieces of plastic and then you click some things from a neatly organized downloaded packages. The instructions aren't precisely clear. The guy, Guppyexpress strength is in programming, not in communicating in English, unfortunately, which is strange because I get the impression that English is his first language. He just writes like an engineer. And you know how engineers write. They don't. They just scribble nonsense shit. It's always awful. Anyway, thank you, Guppyexpress, for making this actually a good piece of hardware, even though your writing is interesting. This is very optional. This is a very optional thing. You know, if you have it, make sure you get Guppyexpress's firmware, and then it's pretty cool. But it's not a game changer. You know, it works. It works as advertised, after a fashion, after a bunch of weird stuff, but it does. Yeah, it's just that I feel that, again, the software is not making the most of it as it could. And it is disappointing that you can't really use this in something like VR chat. So again, I'll check out NeoS. Maybe, I don't even know. I don't know the first fucking thing about it. I'll leave comments. Anyway, that's my review of the Droolon Pi eye tracking add-on for the Pimax 8KX. So yeah, neat-ish. Ah, before I go, some little oddities with this. So when you start your Pimax or Pi tool up, if the eye track software isn't running, it throws an error that looks like it's really serious. It actually isn't. You can play with fixed foveated rendering net. It will show, here, this is where I'll show it. I will say FFR, so fixed foveated rendering, will say inactive because we're not playing a game. If you were to load up a game and take off your headset, it would say active. And then when you run the software, the actual eye tracking software, it will say DFR. And dynamic will show up instead of fixed and foveated rendering in the settings as well. But it looks like once you have this module attached, that you can't go back to fixed foveated rendering for whatever reason, in case there is a compatibility specifically with dynamic. I haven't seen it yet. It could happen. But it looks like it won't let you just go back to using fixed, but you can just close the eye tracking software and ignore that error message. It doesn't matter. And then it'll work just as it always did with regular fixed. There you go. Ah, yes, and before I forget, another little note is that it does add quite a bit of thickness over the lenses. Like, not all that different than the prescription lenses you might have for your headset or another headset, but it's quite thick. It wasn't a problem for me with the 15 millimeter thickness, not at all. But do make a note. I'll show you a picture here. So you can see it's quite thick. So I don't know whether that would be a problem for you or not. For me, absolutely not. I don't notice it at all. But I have heard at least one other person did have a problem with it resting like on his face a bit. So depending on your face shape, this may not even be really a great option. So there's a lot of depending, which is kind of true of Pimax in general, right? Okay. Hi. Okay. One more quick extra thing. Some people have asked if there was glare from the addition of a second set of lenses, right? Because that's kind of what the index does, and it's super fucking annoying on the index. I haven't noticed anything. You can sort of tell that there's another lens, but the lenses seem pretty good. I haven't noticed any significant problem with glare or any problems really from the additional sheet of glass in front of you now. So it has been a problem. Okay, that's it. I think I have nothing else to say. All right, thanks for coming. Love ya.